Hey everybody, time to make some beans. I've got a pot of good Mother Stallard beans that I cooked earlier. I'm going to be working on those. Get this lighting. I've got some crazy light. I'm going to leave for a second to adjust a light. Sorry about that. Just look at my pot of beans while I'm gone. That created some glare. I'm back. All right, oh, much better. Okay, so I see some people are on, Christine, Wendy Wright. So I have my already cooked good Mother Stallard beans, and I'm going to use those in my recipe. I've already got my pan heated up, and I'm gonna be adding some ingredients to that, but we're making, it's kind of called a stew. It's taken from Hello Betty Pack from Cincinnati. The original recipe came from William Sonoma, and it was called Kale and Good Mother Stallard Bean Stew. But of course I have to change things around because all these recipes start with 1/4 cup of olive oil, as you probably know. So we're not gonna do that. So I have to change them around, and then I like to kind of change the recipe too, because I never like what other people are doing. I'm kind of watching the comments here. I have a lot of things to put in this bean stew, and I'll show you what I have. I have, you know, the typical celery, carrots, and onion, and I didn't have shallots. I know my recipe ingredients said to use shallots, but I didn't have any shallots, so I'm using onion. And then I have some tomatoes. This time of year I have a lot of tomatoes that are starting to grow, cherry tomatoes. I have tomatoes that are in my refrigerator that need to be used because they were too soft to keep out on the counter. I picked some parsley out of the garden. I had a jalapeno. I thought I would throw that in, some thyme. And then it started raining, so I came in because I was getting wet, but I could have picked some more herbs, fresh herbs, but I didn't. So this is one of those recipes that you can make your own. You don't have to go with what let's see, hello, Barb Selby, hi. You don't have to go with my recipe exactly. You can add different things to it. This is really a good recipe that you can use whatever you have in your garden. And here's some kale. I'm gonna put some kale in at the end. But I'll tell you about the way I use kale when I make some kind of soup like this. So I'm going to set these beans aside. They've already cooked, so what I asked everybody to do was to make your beans. I have the Rancho Gordo Good Mother Stallard beans. Hi Rose, hi Artie, hi Wendy. I already said hi to Wendy. I ordered a bunch of these because they became available from Rancho Gordo. And these beans, they haven't been available forever. They sent them to us one time in our quarterly bean club shipment. So we got these one time, and they raved, Rancho Gordo raved about how these were the best beans, the most popular beans, famous beans, whatever. And I thought they were really good, but then they never had them again. They were always out. They would always say they're so rare and hard to get that if they ever get them again, they'll notify us. Well, they notified us a couple weeks ago and said, we have the Good Mother Stallard beans back. So of course I ordered several bags thinking they would never have them again. So now I have a bunch of them. So I'm making the first batch that I've made since whenever it was, a year or two ago. And I'm making this kind of a vegetable stew with them. But they tasted really good, you know, just by themselves. They tasted great. And you can see them, they're kind of a brown bean, and they're large, and they're very creamy, and they're described as, this pan's getting hot, they're described as velvety, earthy, nutty, and creamy. And they do hold up well. They don't tend to fall apart, so the shell on them or the skin on them stays together, which sometimes is desirable because then they don't kind of mush as you cook them. But they did take quite a while to cook. I started them at, I started cooking them, let's say at 12:30. I did boil them for about 20 minutes after I put, Julie Denton said, I just received my Mother Stallard beans. I'm anxious to try your recipe. Yeah, so after I boiled them, you know, I added the carrot, celery, and onions, just like the recipe link I posted to the YouTube video I did on how to make the basic beans. And then I cooked them. I think it took about 3 hours to cook them, to get them tender. Okay, so don't be surprised if these beans take you about 3 hours to cook. They're not quick beans. So be patient when you're cooking them. They do take a while. So today's recipe, see if I can get down to my cutting board a little bit better. So in today's recipe, and I can see the comments, I don't have my computer set up today because I think lately the comments have been showing up on my phone screen, so I can see them. I have to kind of strain my eyes a little bit because of just the angle of my phone, but I can see when there's a comment, so I'll try to answer your comments as they come up. And then if the stars are enabled, that just means if you want to buy stars, I end up getting a penny per star, so it's not a big deal, but it's just a fun thing. It's a way for you to show your appreciation, I guess, in pennies. Okay, I have an onion, and I'm going to put about this half an onion. It's like a cup of onion. I'm making a couple of horizontal slices. And then I'm going to make some vertical slices along the lines of the onion. Doesn't have to be perfect. So you need about 3 cups of cooked beans. And that's about 1 cup of dry beans. What I have is I made the whole pound of beans, and half of the pound of beans makes about this recipe, 3 cups. But I made the whole pound because I made these yesterday. And I served them for my birthday dinner. The kids wanted me to make my own beans. They're funny. They said, hey, Mom, we're at the grocery store, the one I like to go to, Central Market. And they said, you know, do you want us to buy beans for you? And I'm just putting the beans in my skillet. I've got my skillet. It's on medium-high, and I'm going to start sautéing all these vegetables. So you can kind of see my skillet right here. So I've got this going. It's kind of hot, but that's okay. I don't have to add any liquid, nothing. I just have it kind of heating up. Don't worry about adding anything to your vegetables. Let them kind of brown first. People are always in a big hurry to start adding water, and then you end up with a bunch of watery steamed vegetables. So my kids wanted, adult children, they're not really kids, they said, you know, Mom, we don't mind getting some beans and then we'll cook them for you. And they said, or you can use your beans that you have, because we noticed last time we were over that you had a whole pantry full of beans. So my one son that likes to cook, he looked in my pantry the last time he was over and he saw that I had 1,000,000 bags of Rancho Gordo beans. So he's thinking, we don't need to get her any beans. She's got a bunch of them. So I said, yes, I'll make some beans. And I thought, aha, I'll make my bean of the week beans on Sunday, and then I'll have less to do on Monday. So it was great. And the other funny thing is I knew that they weren't going to eat that many beans. I just knew it because they don't like beans that much. Well, they like them okay, but they were eating other things besides what I was eating. I was eating grilled vegetables, beans, and Spanish rice. They were eating unmentionable stuff that they grilled for themselves. So, you know, I knew that they wouldn't eat that many beans. And, you know, out of my 6 dogs, Taro's here. He's behind me, drinking some water with his cone on. He's recovering well from his surgery. Poor little thing. Oh my goodness. Last week at this time, he was probably in there having his surgery. He had swallowed something. We don't really know what it was. And he had to have it surgically removed. So it's been a week. He's doing really well. His stitches are all healed up. He has to have him in for 2 weeks, and then he'll get him out. So out of the whole pound of beans, about 6 cups of beans, with 9 people, I still had 3.5 cups of beans left. So all 9 people ate 2.5 cups of beans, and probably a big portion of those were mine. So I knew they wouldn't eat all those beans that I cooked. You know, they just don't like them that much. So let me see. I'll put So put my lid on here for a minute. And I'm going to add a little bit of water now because I can tell the onions are cooking well. So I'm going to add like a tablespoon of water and let them soften up a little bit. I just like the onions to soften up and not have that sharp taste. I'm going to cut up a couple of ribs of celery, just chop them. And this is different from the vegetables I use to cook my beans. You know, I cooked a pot of beans earlier yesterday and I used carrot, celery, and onion in the beans, but I'm also using it in the stew. So this is a whole different recipe. It's just that I'm using my cooked beans. So I'm going to put this, I'm only going to use one rib of celery. My recipe says 2, but these are so big. I just think if I put 2 celery ribs in there, I think it's going to be too much celery. So I just make those decisions as I go. If you have little dinky celery ribs, just use 1. So my carrots, I'm going to use 2, and these are kind of skinny carrots. These are those carrots that they sell with the greens attached, and they're not very big, so I'm going to use 2. But if you have some giant fat carrots, just use 1. Otherwise, you'll have too much too much carrots or too much celery. So, you know, use recipes as a guideline, but sometimes with recipes you have to think about your own taste preferences. You know, some people don't like the taste of certain vegetables and you don't want to overpower it with that. Amy Jo Moore says, good afternoon. Hello, Amy. So I'm also going to use some things from my garden. I showed this earlier, but for those of you who are gardeners, right now, every day I'm collecting squash and zucchini. This one got a little big. I don't think I'm going to use it today, but I might use it for my zucchini bread. I need to make some more zucchini bread. I love that stuff. So I'm going to chop the carrot. I'm just cutting it into lengthwise pieces, and then I'm going to chop those. So I'll show you how I do it. I cut them into, I just cut the carrot into strips, if you can see that. And then I cut the strips into little chopped pieces. So I'm going to cook all these things, carrot, celery, onions, any other vegetables. So I wanted to tell you that this is a time where, I don't know if that many people are gardeners, but I am. So anything growing in your garden can be put in this kind of vegetable and bean, we'll call it a stew. But you could put anything in there that goes, you know, I mean, I probably wouldn't put okra in here, but whatever you've got going on in your garden, any kind of squash, tomatoes, you know, zucchini is a squash, but you know, zucchini, onions from your garden, just whatever you think would go well. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be just carrot, celery, and onion. And that the basic recipe for this kind of thing is carrot, celery, onion, and garlic. And then I'm adding some other things, like I'm adding tomato, just a little bit, because I don't want to overpower it with tomatoes. So I'm adding 1 tomato that I just happen to have that I know I need to use, and it's too soft to use as an eating tomato. So I'll use it for this. To peel my garlic, I just cut the hard end off of it, and then I put some weight on it. I'll do one for you. So you take your garlic, cut the hard end off of it, and then you just take your knife and you put all your weight on it and smash it down. Let's see, I have a long comment here. Can't believe you're already harvesting vegetables from your garden. You're so fortunate to have a long growing season. Yeah, the main things I'm harvesting right now are squash, and tomatoes are still green in my garden because I started them late. But I do have a lot of peppers and squash right now. My beans, I don't know if I planted them too late because they're not doing very well. I have all these green beans, but they're just kind of nothing much is happening with them. They're growing leaves, but not producing anything. I have a lot of spaghetti squash, and you know, it's starting to grow, but you know, I hope that it will ripen and I'll actually be able to use it, but it's beautiful. I'll post a picture of it later. It's like, you know, Jack and the Beanstalk, where he goes to bed and then he wakes up in the morning and the beanstalk is like all the way up to the sky. That's what my garden looks like. It's like every time I look out there, it's, you know, just giant. I'd like to show it to you. Maybe at the end I can see if my signal strength is strong enough. I can take you out there and show you a little bit. We'll try it because it's a lot of fun. All right, so I've got my garlic, carrot, celery, and onions in here. So that's the basic stuff for this recipe. But we can add other things too. I didn't even bring my recipe in here. Well, I don't need it. All right, so I have zucchini. So I have this nice zucchini from my garden. I'm going to cut the end off because it's not very pretty looking. Use it in the compost pile. And I'm only going to use half of this zucchini. And I'm going to trim off any discolored pieces. Because, you know, I don't want to put a lot of it in here. I'm not that big of a fan of zucchini. I don't want it to turn into a zucchini soup or stew. So I'll just put, and this is kind of a fat zucchini, so another reason not to put too much in. And then I'll put in a little yellow squash because I love the yellow squash. It tastes really good. I have a pretty one right here. About half of that one. Something about the stuff that you can, if you can grow it, it tastes so much better. It's like sweeter from the garden than once you get it in the store, it's never going to be as good tasting. However, if you have access to a farmer's market, farm stand, local producers, and I see a lot of that. I went to the farmer's market on Saturday morning to get mushrooms that I could use yesterday to make mushrooms for my birthday dinner. And that was really neat. The mushrooms were outstanding. I'm going to turn the heat up on this and cover it with the lid so it'll cook faster. So I got these, this gourmet mushroom farm, and they had king oyster mushrooms, which are really big, maitake mushrooms, and lion's mane mushrooms. And I tried a technique where I sauteed the mushrooms in a skillet, and then I pressed a cast iron skillet on top of the mushrooms to compress them. And then I put broth and seasonings in there, and the mushrooms then became very much like a steak. So they were real meaty, and I finished them in the oven, and they tasted just like you were eating something that was more of a chewy and a meaty substance than just a regular mushroom. All the water and juice drains out of them. It's just a cool technique. I really liked it. It tasted good, and I'll definitely do it again. Okay, so I've got my basic stuff in there. I'm going to add some tomato. I'm going to get my herbs ready. Oh, I'm going to put in a jalapeno pepper. This is not a very big one. I was out there starting to pick stuff, and it started raining, and I was worried that my hair was going to frizz up. Very shallow. But then I would have to go mess with it, and then it would be a delay, so I had to get back in really quickly. My hair is very sensitive to weather, always has been. It's kind of a pain. All right, I'm going to put my one lone jalapeno in here, but you know, this is not intended to be a southwestern spicy soup. This is intended to be more of a herby tomato vegetable profile, so you don't really need hot peppers in yours. But you know me, that's what I like. All right, and I'm using my great big 12-inch skillet because you could use your Dutch oven. Ultimately, I'm going to be putting this all in my 7-quart pot. But the surface area of my 7-quart pot is smaller than my giant skillet. So if I use the skillet to cook all these vegetables, it'll go a lot faster. So that's why I do what I do. It makes sense to me anyway. So I'm going to use 2 tomatoes. I have a Roma tomato that needs to be used. It's about to go bad. And then I have another hothouse tomato, same thing. It's a little too soft for eating, but it's good for this kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and cut around the outside so I don't have this whole big seed pod, and I can use that in my compost bin. Then if you cut around the outside of your tomato, then you don't get all the wet tomato seeds, which, you know, for some things I just don't want a lot of tomato seeds in it. And then I just cut it into little cubes. Then I have my chopped tomatoes. So you can use your garden tomatoes for lots of dishes. And you can puree them and use them as sauces in different dishes too. Like last night, my daughter made this really good Spanish rice. And one of the things in her Spanish rice was to make chopped tomatoes. And then she took chopped tomatoes, let's see, can you freeze banana bread? Yes, you can freeze your hippie banana bread. Just, I like to cut it into slices because once it's frozen, of course, you can't just get out a big frozen chunk of banana bread and eat it. You have to defrost it if it's a big chunk. So if you freeze it in individual slices, you can just get out the individual slices and eat them. So yes, you can freeze banana bread. I always keep some. I don't have banana bread right now, but I have a bunch of frozen zucchini bread and pumpkin bread in my freezer in slices. I haven't eaten any lately because I had a goal of dropping a little weight before my birthday, which is tomorrow. I was trying to get off my last few pounds so that I could be at my absolute goal weight by my birthday. But I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think part of the reason it's not going to happen is because, you know, different things. I'm not losing weight very fast, which I think my body is telling me I've lost enough weight. I don't really need to lose any more. And, you know, part of it is probably didn't help that I ate a piece of carrot cake last night. It wasn't a big piece, but, you know, can't lose a lot of weight if you're eating carrot cake. Hey, Julia Buttermore. Julia Buttermore's also trying to lose some weight. And I bet she didn't eat carrot cake last night. She's eating really healthy. Amy Jo Moore says, happy birthday. Thank you. I'll be 67 tomorrow. So that sounds like a high number to me now. You know, it's kind of like, wow, how did I live that long so far? But the good news is, if you're healthy and you're getting on in your years, like, you know, I feel really good, but even better than I did when I was a lot younger. So it's kind of like, you know, it doesn't really matter that I'm going to be 67 tomorrow. What really matters is I don't have any health problems. I'm healthy. Talia Doyle says, happy early birthday. Thank you, Talia. I hope you're doing well. I see your pictures from Las Vegas. See that you had your mom out to visit. Can't wait to go to New Orleans one of these days and see her. How did your daughter make the Spanish rice? I have her recipe. She gave it to me this morning because people were asking, so I'm going to post it. That Spanish rice was so good. I'm going to eat some for dinner tonight. It was really good. I asked her, and it was funny because I said, what's in this rice? It was kind of spicy. And she said, oh, you know, she's kind of like me, I think. She just kind of cooks by feel sometimes. And she said that she took all these different vegetables. That was thyme and parsley I put in here. She took all these different vegetables. And I'm just going to close the lid for a second. I'll let you see how this is going. You can see it here. Here's all the vegetables. It's the carrot, celery, onion, zucchini, yellow squash, some chopped up tomatoes, a little parsley, jalapeno pepper, fresh thyme from the garden, and I'm just letting it cook. I want it to cook down just a little bit before I add the beans and everything. But so she was telling me, she said, oh, I took, you know, some vegetables and saute. See, my hair's all getting all crazy, curly. She was sauteing all these vegetables, and then she put tomatoes in there and a can of green chilies and all this stuff, and then she blended them in the blender, and she created this really beautiful kind of a tomatoey, spicy green chili tomato sauce. And then she took the rice and browned the rice in her pot, added all her tomatoey liquid, cooked it, and then she added corn at the end. It was really good. I'm going to make it using her recipe. I'm going to make it, and let's see, I didn't see that last comment. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to use brown rice. Brown basmati rice works really well, so I'm going to make it again. This may be a silly question, but you don't use the stems of the herbs when you cut them up? I've never known what to do with them. No, you know, I don't use the stems. Where did I put them? I put them over here. The stems are tough. So what you can do with stems, you can use stems to make vegetable broth because they're too tough to eat. If you tried to eat this, you know, it would make your food have kind of a woody flavor, a woody texture. And also thyme stems, although fresh thyme from the garden isn't bad, but if you buy thyme in the store, the thyme stems are hard. You could choke on a thyme stem. They impressed upon that in culinary school. They told us, you know, don't eat thyme, or make sure you trim your thyme so nobody gets a stem. Hi, Terry Malnar. Yeah, stems don't chew up well, somebody said. So yeah, no, you don't want to eat stems. Okay, so these have cooked long enough. I just wanted to, because I don't want to have to cook this bean mixture that long. So what I'm going to do next is, I've got my pot here, and I'm going to add this mixture, this cooked vegetable mixture. Remember how I've told you that it's a good thing I lift weight, because this is like the world's heaviest skillet. I'm kind of resting it on my pot to dump it out. Let's see, Amy Jo Moore says, how long have you been a culinary school? Oh, I attended culinary school back in 2008. I was still working. I was on active duty, and I was working at my regular job, and I went to culinary school at night and on the weekends because I thought it would be fun to be a chef. You know, I thought, I had been watching Food Network, and I thought, oh, you know, I could be a chef, and I could be a caterer, and I could be a personal chef and make food for people. I just thought that sounded like fun. Little did I know that it wasn't a fun thing, not for me. It was more like the world's hardest work to be a, you know, to do dinner parties and cook for people. That is not a fun thing. So I graduated in 2009. I did some events and stuff, but I decided that it was way too much. Okay, I'm going to add in your recipe that I'm going to post, it says 3 cups of beans, but I have a few more than 3, so that's 1. And I'm not rinsing them, but I'm not using extra juice. I'm just using the juice that's on them already. That's 2. And I didn't have a lot of juice on my beans. That's 3, and then I have a little bit more in my pan. I didn't have a lot of juice in here because I let them kind of cook down so they'd have a rich cooking liquid. That's just the way I like it. So I'm just adding the beans that were already in their juice to all my vegetables. And so I'll show you that there's not a lot of liquid in there right now. It's just kind of very thick. But I'm going to be adding to this some broth. I have 3 cups of vegetable broth, vegetable stock. And the kind I use one from the supermarket that I really like. It's an organic vegetable broth, and they make it at the Central Market, which is a gourmet grocery store. And I really like this one. It tastes really good, but it does have sodium. So like this one, I diluted it with water, so it's like half water and half vegetable stock. And that then gives you the same type of effect you would get if you used a low sodium stock. So if you get a vegetable stock that is not as low sodium as you want, like I consider low sodium to be like a 200 milligrams of sodium per cup, to me is low, about as low as you can get for it to still have some taste. So, you know, that I would get the 200 milligrams or less of sodium, but if it has more, you can just dilute it with water, and then you're reducing the sodium. So, you know, just dilute it and you'll be good. So that's kind of what I do with it. The best thing to do is make your own stock. but I don't always have time or the ability to make my own stock, so I just use the store-bought quite a bit, and I like the way it tastes. Let's see if there's any questions. I see a bunch of comments and people scrolling by. So then all we have to do is we have our beans and our vegetables. I'm gonna kind of bring it to a boil. I can add some seasonings, like I can add salt. Let's see, Mary Nolan said, gosh, that's good to know about the sodium. What brand did you say you like? It is Central Market. So that's just the name of our store, but you know, I'm sure, and this is just their local thing, but it says product of Canada, so it's probably another brand, but I like it because it's really light colored. It doesn't, some of those vegetable broths are ugly. They're real like reddish and they are strong. This is pretty good. My beans already had a little salt, so I'm not going to add any salt. So I need to bring them to a boil. It looks beautiful the way it is. You know, it doesn't really need a lot. It needs to come to a boil and cook for about 20 minutes. I'll show you. Let's see, you can see it. So you see it's the nice dark, good Mother Stallard beans, all the pretty vegetables, whatever you have growing in your garden or what, you know, at the farmer's market. Les Swanson is watching. I bet Les has some of these Rancho Gordo beans, don't you, Les? This is a good way to use them, and it's also a good way to use any beans. So all of you who have your stockpile of beans, you can use this recipe with any bean. So basically this is, we can call it summer bean stew. So you take whatever you can find at the farmer's market, whatever's growing in your garden, you know, carrot, celery, onion, fresh herbs from your garden or from the store. I have cherry tomatoes I picked from my garden, whatever you can get. And basically what we're doing is we're sauteing all the vegetables in a skillet to get them cooked, because they don't cook that well once you put them in the boiling water. They just get soft and soggy. But if you brown them in a skillet, they'll kind of caramelize and give you that nice kind of deeper flavor. So we put those in here with cooked beans, 3 cups of cooked beans, 3 cups of vegetable broth or stock, homemade or store-bought, and then we add herbs. And so this is another thing that you can customize. You know, I have basil, tarragon, oregano, rosemary, thyme, marjoram. You know, I have every herb you can think of growing out here. So I went out there to pick a bunch of different ones, and it started raining. So I kind of got stalled with the rain. But we could pick any herbs that we wanted to, and we could add fresh herbs. Just a handful. Don't add too many or it will overpower them. Let's see, I see some expressions on there. I don't know what those, they look like crying. I don't know if you're crying because you don't like my bean stew, but anyway, you can make a summer bean stew with any bean. Bring it to a boil, and then you adjust the seasoning. Like I just tasted it, thought it could use a little, maybe some ground pepper. It didn't need any salt, but we could add some freshly ground pepper. Got some here. And I have sea salt here, but I'm not going to add any because, like I said, I put some salt in my Rancho Gordo beans when I made them yesterday. So they don't really need any. And it's coming to a boil, and all we have to do is cook this, simmer it for 20 minutes, and then we have this beautiful stew. And I'm going to take you out and let you see the garden while this is cooking once it comes to a boil. And let me tell you about how to finish it before. So I have some sherry vinegar, and the Williams Sonoma recipe, sherry vinegar smells good, has you put like a spoonful of sherry vinegar in the stew when you serve it. So that's an option. Let's see, Amy Jo Moore says, you said every herb you can think. Oh, just funny. You're stocked. Yes, I have lots of herbs in my garden. And then the other addition is the kale. Okay, so what I plan to do is I plan to wait and add the kale to my individual serving, because I don't really want to put kale in the whole pot of soup because I plan to change it up a little bit. I'm going to have this for a few days, and it will be good for like 5 days. So I don't want to eat the same thing every day, so I'm not going to add all the kale right now. I'm only going to add kale to the portion that I eat tonight. So tonight when I heat it up, I'll take a handful of kale, chop it up small, add it to my bean stew, and then heat it up until the kale is wilted, and then I'll be done. If you wanted to add this whole bunch of kale chopped up small to this pot of bean stew, you could, and then all your bean stew will have kale in it. I just don't want it in all of it because I eat tons of greens, and I've already eaten them today, and I can use these greens in other things too. So I'm not going to put them all in the bean stew. I may change this up a little bit. I may have it with brown rice. I may have it with who knows what. So I'm just going to keep it more simple and not have the kale in all of it. And then that way I could, I may add some other vegetables. I don't know. I may add some corn. That's another thing that would go really well in here is summer corn. So if someone gave you a bunch of corn, or corn at the market is really good, I'd scrape some corn off of there, or frozen corn, and put corn in here. In fact, I may add corn to this after I get done with the video because that sounds really good to me for some reason. So any vegetable you like, I'm going to reduce it. It's boiling. Here, I'll show you. It's kind of come to a boil. It smells wonderful. And let's see, let's look at all the ingredients. See how everything is cooking down. So it's all kind of, everything was already semi-cooked, but now what it's doing is it's softening up. It's getting nice and cooked. And it's not going to get thick. That's not the kind of thing this is. I don't have my lid. I didn't bring my lid in, so I'll use my skillet lid and cover it with the lid. And then, like I told you, I'm going to take you outside. Let you see my buddy Taro real quick. Taro, everybody's worried about you. And there's Mochi. They're just laying in here watching me as usual. That's what they do. Let's see how the signal works. If we can get out here. It finally stopped raining, so I want to show you the Jack and the Beanstalk situation. Now I can see that it's going to have trouble connecting, but the herb garden is over here. That's where I collected a lot of herbs. Here is a lot of herbs on this garden tower and peppers. You can see I don't know if you could see that serrano pepper, but there's a pepper. And then I've got different kinds of spinach that can go in my daily greens. I can just come out here and pick them. But straight ahead, and I'll go as far, it won't let me, but I can zoom in and you can kind of see my Jack and the Beanstalk situation over here. That just in the course of one day, the vines will grow up, and these are great big huge spaghetti squash. Well, you're not seeing it, but anyway, I think you get the picture that it's a jungle out here, and you can grow so many different things outside in your yard. Let's see if I could see it better from here. I'm gonna go to the window. Sorry. See how sweaty I got just being in here? Here we go. So I'm gonna go to the window. I think I can get a better view. This here is the big thing you see at the top is like a giant spaghetti squash. So I have so much stuff out there. I hope that it continues to grow and that I can pick it and actually use it. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but I think it will this year. And here I am back by the pot, and I'm gonna plate some of this stew so you could see it plated. Get my thing back here. It's kind of hot out there. All right, so even on simmer, it's cooking away. And what I'm going to do is show you how we can plate this. I just kind of stirred it up. Here, you can't really see what I'm doing. So I got it stirred up. I made a kind of a mess here. but it's kind of the consistency of soup. It's not really a stew. And like I said, my plan is to, first of all, I'm gonna get a paper towel. Made it kind of messy here. You can garnish it with parsley or whatever herbs you have, but I would like to, and I have a little parsley left here on my knife. I would like to add some corn to this. I think corn would be a nice addition. So you can see all the beautiful, oh, potatoes would be good. The carrot, onion, zucchini. I think adding some Yukon Gold potatoes, cooked potato would be good. Like if you had leftover cooked potatoes sitting around, chop one up and add it. And there's a little spice in there from the jalapeno. It needs to cook for a few more minutes. I'll put it back in here. So don't do what I did and taste your food and put it back in the pot, but I didn't put that spoon back in there. Yeah, it needs about 10 more minutes, but that was delicious, you guys. You need to make this. Those Good Mother Stallard beans, they make an incredible tasting broth. That was another thing about them, is that, oh, I lost my comments. That's weird. All right. I don't know what happened, but I lost all the comments, so I can't see them, but I'll look at them later. But the Good Mother Stallard beans, they're known for producing a really good tasting broth. Okay? I don't even know if I'm still on.